All right, we're live. How you all doing today? Social workers of Alabama. Happy to talk to you all today. Let's get to business. We have some things to share today. Today was really interesting. It's the end of the month, near the end of the month. And so if you're doing group supervision, many times you have people that I have several groups. And so sometimes the supervisees or they may miss their supervision. And so you want to make sure they get it in because technically, if they miss just 1 hour, they lose them all. Something that some of us don't know about. And so I actually end up doing a couple of one-on-ones just to make sure that everybody was caught up. But everybody, and I don't always do that, but when I have the opportunity, because I don't want anybody to lose it. And so that is what we did. And so it was a busy day today. Um, and what we talked about in supervision was really interesting. Each of the groups, again, we talked about a number of different things, but the focus of this particular group, what we talked about today, was we're talking on the subject of, the duty to warn. And we're not going to get real deep in that. I have to just name these things because I'm talking about so much during supervision. Okay. I'm talking about so much. And then I've got to figure out a title that sounds like something, but that I'm actually covering. So hopefully we're going to touch fully on the duty to warn. But is there a duty to warn when it comes to domestic violence? And how we're going to start off is talking about a particular case where, again, we're wanting to make sure that we're ethical in our conduct so that we can avoid litigation, so that we can protect the client, number one, because it's our duty to provide safety in these situations. But while we're talking about that, we're also going to get into today about how to understand why clients respond the way they do. We've been talking a lot about core beliefs. Many of the negative responses that you will see that we have as humans is a result of having negative core beliefs. Negative core beliefs. I'm going to make this point. Negative core beliefs that often are developed in childhood, okay? Often are developed in childhood. So if I'm having someone who maybe offends me, um, and we'll use the example of, somebody hanging up the phone on me or doesn't call me back or something like that, and then I have a reaction about that. A lot of times when we study that reaction, that emotional response after anger, we're going to talk about that. After anger, what is the response? Because anger is a secondary emotion. We want to get behind that. After that has happened, what is the emotional response that I receive? What is the core belief that I have? And many times the core belief, and we'll talk a little bit about this, about the uns. The uns, I got that from Yanla. The uns, unloved, unlovable, unaccepted, unworthy. If that makes me feel unloved, guess what? When I peel things back, this is the same response, the same emotion, the same sensations that I felt when I experienced the childhood neglect, maybe from a parent. Maybe if my parent was rude or my parent abandoned me and I tried to call them, they never would call me back. And so what we see a lot of times is that initial reaction, that initial response. Many times when you're triggered, if somebody's triggered by anger, like what we talked about Mike last week, if he was triggered by anger, the emotion behind that, but there's emotion behind that, but then there's a core belief behind it. And this is the thing, what I find out. So for some people, if you get rejected, say like the phone situation, they just won't call me back or they hung up the phone on me. It made me feel unloved. But in feeling unloved, my response to feeling unloved made me feel sad. Okay. Um, but some people it makes them feel angry. Again, this emotional response, many times it's tied into the exact same response where it was developed. So if we're going back to abandonment or neglect from that parent or whatever, then I'm actually many times experiencing, first off, some people get sad about these, some people get mad All right. And so there's always a connection. And depending on what type of approach you use, you may take them all the way back. You may get regressive with like psychoanalysis, or you may do something that's more present focus or solution focus in your approaches. So these are some of the things that we talked about. But real quick, I want to try to get into the specifics of what we talked about. But just before we do that, I want to take 1 minute to let you know about this. All right. So we have a DSM-5 TR training that you, for those of you all that are LICSWs, you can get the credits that you need. You can get the CU credits that you need that are required for LICSWs through this training. It is an on-demand training. And so you can just go at your own pace, check it out. And then we have a social work supervisor training for those of you all who, like me, you want to do what I'm doing, you want to become a supervisor. It's a very exciting experience, and you really get to pour in to a lot of people, making a difference in a large way. So that's on November 11th and 12th. These are all online training. Okay, so let's go on and get back into what we were talking about. And so this is the case. So what I'll often do, I'll bring the information, we'll put it in the chat, and then we'll read it off. So we're going to do it like this. So the case that we have, it's relative to a couple. So the insured license, and I want you to be thinking, what would be your action? And this is what I asked the supervisees. What would be your action in this situation? Okay, wait, 3:30. What would be your action? Okay. The insured licensed professional counselor provided services to a married couple, both together and individually, for approximately 1 month. The sessions revealed that the husband continues to have a fixed belief that the spouse is cheating on him without any signs or any reasonable actions by the wife. There are multiple episodes of emotional abuse by the husband. So the husband is being abusive, who also made physical threats against his wife and their children. And he admitted to holding a loaded gun during marital discussions. In addition, the husband placed security. I guess I should let me see if I could just share the screen so y'all can see this case right quick. Um, Okay, here we go. Uh, so in addition, the husband placed security cameras throughout their home and required his wife to wear a recording device. I can't tell you how many cases I work with similar situations when it comes to this kind of stuff right here. In order to hear her conversations when she was not in his presence, he further attempted unsuccessfully to have a friend engage his wife in an affair to prove his belief that she was being unfaithful. So he tried to get his boy to set up something with his wife romantically, and he failed. So this guy is having a hard time because he can't relax because he believes that his wife is cheating on him. Okay. And so he's become abusive and all these different things. So in summary, like, what, as a social worker, what is my responsibility in this situation? What do I do? And the question that I ask here is what I say is, what are the potential problems in this case? I had a couple supervisors laughing because it's like a problem. It's a lot of problems. So how should you respond? And the answer in this case is that there's a number of things that we need to look at. Okay. And before we answer that question, because we've been thinking about core beliefs, I want to ask the question too, for someone who is acting this irrationally, because this individual might just be your client. He's acting irrational. He's seeming somewhat paranoid. He wants to track the wife because he strongly believes, he has a conviction that she's cheating on him, and he can't be convinced anything otherwise, right? So what is possibly the core belief that he has? Okay. And so again, when we're talking about core beliefs. We kind of have to dig down to try to best understand what an individual's core belief is, because again, this is the thing: when it's a negative core belief, it causes us to many times have negative responses to certain things. So another example, like I used before, if you had someone that you were really trying to be friends with, and I don't know if you ever had this happen before, but you had a friend that's supposed to be a friend, but they don't pick up the phone when you call. But then you find out from somebody else that they're picking up the phone when they call and stuff like that. Um, there may be a reaction to that. Okay. So again, what in that situation, with someone who doesn't call back, and we talk about this because these are the type of things that we have to process when we are trying to provide. We're establishing treatment plan, understanding what we're going to treat as we go, understanding our client, understanding the things that make them feel very insecure. Okay. So somebody doesn't pick up the phone. The initial response might be that you're angry. Um, uh, but you want to know what is behind the anger. And some of the feelings behind that anger might be that I'm feeling rejection, I'm feeling loneliness, or I'm feeling insecurity, right? That might be the feeling, right? But some of the core beliefs might be something like I'm feeling unwanted, unloved, unaccepted, unimportant. Okay. So if this is the case, again, the goal in treatment many times is to, we want to, uh, uh, we want to change those negative core beliefs to something that's positive. So now when each time when I experience rejection, I'm not unconsciously feeling the emotions that I felt when I had an abandoned parent or parent to abandon me or treat me in a certain type of way, because that's where a lot of this begins. So we talked about that. The core beliefs of the abuser. Let's just run through that. So let's identify some potential core beliefs of the abuser. So we have, he may feel deeply insecure about whether his wife loves him, leading him to suspect identity and demand, I mean infidelity, and demand control over her actions. So he's feeling unloved. He might feel unlovable. He may hold a deep-seated belief that he's not worthy of love, um, leading, not worthy of love, driving his intense need for reassurance and control. So control many times comes because we have had situations in the past where we have felt unloved or unlovable. Okay, fearing that his wife would betray him, unaccepted. Somebody didn't accept this brother here. And, and the interesting thing is, in this particular case, this is a case example. The lawsuit is that, you know what, this is what you did to me. He sued the counselor for breach of privacy, a fiduciary duty, emotional distress, the loss of his marriage and family. Sound like a narcissist. He's suing because they separate. He's not imagining that possibly the separation occurred because you're tracking your wife. Anyway, um, and incorrect diagnosis. So he's saying like, no, you should have diagnosed me of this. So these are all the different things that we have to be mindful of. And so in a case like this, again, getting back to the question of what really should be going on here is, number one, we want to look at safety. Okay, safety. Some of the supervisors said, yeah, we're looking at safety. And the question was, is safety of who though? Safety of who? That's what we have to identify, because getting back to the title of this, not all the time is um are we to respond, or do we have a duty to respond to the safety of the partner who may be receiving abuse? Okay. But at every time, in every situation, we have to respond if there are children involved. And so that's the answer there, is that it's the social worker's duty. If this was a social worker, right? It's the social worker's duty to make a report to DHR that, because it's emotional abuse. Okay. If a child has to witness any domestic violence, as a matter of fact, they'll come to us because they have to get DV classes. And if they got into a fight in front of the children, that's considered abuse. Okay. Believe it or not, that's considered abuse. And both of them may have to get domestic violence counseling, and anger management counseling, things of that nature. So, but the thing is, this is damaging the emotional state of the child. So we want to keep that in mind. Let's move right along. So that is the primary thing. Now, what about the protection and the duty of the clinician to protect the spouse? Well, that's a little bit different. And when we get into the duty of the clinician to protect the spouse, it's a little bit different. Now, when we're talking about situations like Tarasoff, there is a duty for us to warn. But when is it the clinician's duty to warn? Now, if we were meeting with a couple and we met with the male or we met with the female and either one of them said, "Hey, I'm going to kill my spouse." At that point, it would be our duty to warn and to maybe call the authorities. Well, to call the authorities to warn her about the impending danger from the threats or from the plans. Okay. However, when it's an adult and the adult is aware not of someone trying to kill her, but if she's receiving abuse, it's been physical abuse, things like that. Um, what we mostly want to do is educate, and then we have to determine if we're going to continue therapy, if we're not. Um, I personally don't want to drop them because it's a lot of safety things that may be a concern, and then where are they going to get help? But each clinician has to make their own judgment. So in this situation, we're going to want to make sure that that we have discussed between the two of them these situations that are where to follow up for safety and protection and things like that. But it's not our duty to call the authorities and things of that nature. But we do need to make that report about the children. That is our duty in the situation. And so that's a little bit of what we talked about. Then we even went to the point to ask about what what could be the potential diagnosis of our client here? What could be the potential diagnosis of our client? The one who has the negative core beliefs. What might be his core beliefs? Of course, we talked about how he might feel unloved, unlovable, unaccepted, unworthy. But on top of that, if he's having a strong belief or conviction, and sometimes we can miss this. I'm not gonna lie. I had a client where I missed this because I don't know if I was looking at OCD uh, uh, or something of that nature, but um, someone who has maybe a delusional disorder, that's something that we might want to put on the table. We don't have enough information here. Okay, if it's gone over a month of just a conviction, and that's the difference too between, I think, many times personality disorders and delusional disorders and other things. Um, the difference is one person can suspect something. If I suspect something, that's different. But when my suspicion becomes conviction without evidence speaking of a conviction, then many times we're exploring personality disorders. We're doing exploring other things like that. And so then the question was, and we just keep getting into this. We keep asking questions. So let's say it was delusional disorder. What some people say, well, if they're having delusions, that's something that we might see from a schizophrenic, right? So then the question is, what is the difference between schizophrenia and a delusional disorder? And so we talked about that and we showed a video about that with Tracy Marks. And Tracy Marks, she goes on to talk about some things on how we differentiate delusional disorders from for someone who has schizophrenia. And with a delusional disorder, just in summary, delusional disorder, that is primarily their primary symptom is the delusions or the delusion. That is the base. Whereas with schizophrenia, you have symptoms of like what we know as psychosis, or we have other symptoms like delusions, hallucinations, negative symptoms, grossly disorganized thinking and behavior, right? And so it's a little bit different. Also, there's a difference in the delusions. Some of the delusions for someone who has a delusional disorder are these things can actually be happening. So, it's hard to just say, oh, well, this is not true sometimes. It's many times a possibility. If for instance, if they see someone on television and they say, hey, this person really wants to be with me. Well, that could be true, but it's not likely true. But that's more of a delusional disorder. But when we talk about grossly disorganized, or when we talk about more bizarre delusions, I'm sorry, we're looking at things that are reflective of someone who like has a bizarre delusion, like, oh, well, somebody's trying to take my guts out or something like that. We're going to go on and end it. Wow, 20 minutes already. We're going to go on and end it here. This is what we talked about. I'm going to try to put some of the clips of some of the things that were referenced here. So if you want to share this with some of your groups, or your individuals in supervision, or if it's something that you just want to tighten up on for yourself, hopefully this will be helpful. Y'all have a great weekend, and we'll see y'all again on next week. Y'all take care. Bye-bye.